If you want a 3D print, you've probably had this happen to you at some point. Everything's going great, but for some reason, when either removing your print from the print bed like myself, or cleaning up the model, you may break something. And it can be frustrating, especially on a larger print where you don't want to have to waste the filament and the actual time on the printer, you know, 4, 5, 6 hours, whatever, even more depending on the size of the model that you've got. So yeah, let's have a look at how I fixed this issue. As you can see, this was printed in a wood mix filament, and when I came to remove it from the bed, it had basically welded itself to the PVA glue, considerably watered down. I upped the initial layer height to try and stop this from happening, because it has happened once before, but still trying to remove it, I ended up breaking the model. So what I did, thankfully I tend not to throw things out straight away, a bit of a hoarder. I found another print that I stopped early on in the process that had a beautiful, you know, first layer in it removed from the bed really cleanly, and I cut those initial layers off to transplant onto the complete print with the damaged first few layers. We've got a few options here. I'm going to use both of them to fix this model as such. Depending on the type of break, you have, you know, lots of different adhesives you can use, super glues, epoxies. I'm a big fan of Gorilla Glue. It's a polyurethane kind of expanding glue, which is great, especially if your infill's exposed, because it just bonds really, really well. It's a good gap filler and it sands quite nicely. So what I did is I glued the layers back together, got it all lined up, and then I went and got my cheap soldering iron. What I really like about this soldering iron is it comes with a lot of other tips that you can use, and one of them is this hot knife tip. And the hot knife tip's really, really handy to basically manipulate and, you know, melt those layers, fill gaps, all sorts of great stuff. So I initially used it just to secure the layer in place by almost like spot welding, I suppose you could class it as, without welding. So I basically used it to melt the layers in a very small location. Once those have hardened up, it holds those adjoining layers together, which is great. Really good for the next process. I could just leave it and let the glue set and sand from there, but there's a few big gaps that I needed to deal with, and the expanding glue probably wouldn't have left a very good finish. So I got myself a small part of filament and basically used the hot knife to melt the filament and the surrounding surfaces together. This takes a little bit of kind of getting used to as such. It can be a bit delicate, but you end up with a big chunk of not so tidy molten plastic. Once it's hardened and the glue was dried, I then used a Stanley knife blade to trim off as much excess as possible. This is quite a soft filament, so it was very easy to get the excess off. If you're working with any tougher filaments, I would be very, very cautious of how you use the knife. I know some people are probably screaming watching this as I'm using the knife and kind of cutting towards myself. Obviously, be safe, be clever. Always cut away from yourself. Watch those fingertips. Once that was done, I gave it a nice good sand, and as you can see, it's turned out pretty good. If you look closely, you can kind of make out that it's different to the rest of the print, but now that it's been stained and varnished, unless you get within a few centimeters of it, it's quite hard to see that it's not actually from the original model, which is great. So they're two common things that I often use when working with 3D models. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to follow more.